Hi, welcome to the small shed. This Saturday I'm not making anything, I'm going to mending sheds. Join me in a minute. Now on the 6th of April 2020, Captain Tom Moore set out round his garden to thank the NHS heroes, and 100 laps later he'd raised an incredible £38.9 million for the NHS COVID-19 appeal. Now yesterday would have been Captain Sir Tom Moore's 101st birthday and the 1-year anniversary of his extraordinary celebrations following the conclusion of the famous 100 laps of his garden and Tom's simple message of hope: tomorrow will be a good day. Following the outpouring of heartfelt messages since his death on the 2nd of February, his family pledged to celebrate his life with an event that everyone in the UK and around the world could get involved with to celebrate his generosity of spirit, the hope and joy he brought to millions, and his sense of fun. And that event is Captain Tom 100. Everyone's been invited to take part in the challenge around the number 100 anytime, anywhere over the Captain Tom's birthday weekend, starting on Friday the 30th of April through the bank holiday weekend to the Monday the 3rd of May. That could be anything. It could be walking 100 steps, running 100 metres, scoring 100 goals, baking 100 cakes, and so on. Now Age UK, who support our men's shed, along with some of our shedders, have set the challenge to collectively walk 100 miles over the weekend to help raise funds. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a pretty catastrophic effect on many of the charities, with the cancellation of thousands of events and the loss of billions of pounds in income at a time when those most vulnerable members of society need them the most. So like an idiot, I said I'd walk the Canal towpath from our house to Shed's base at Stoke Prior, meet up with some of the shedders, have a socially distanced stroll for those that are less able to put big miles in, and then I'd walk the rest of the way back home while they turn back to the shed. This should throw probably 11 miles into the collective pot, so that's the aim of today. So it's going to be a very different series of videos that I'll be publishing today, Sunday and Monday bank holiday. That way, if you're not interested in me not actually making anything, it's only one normal day video that you're going to miss. You can just skip them and come back on next Friday, and we'll hopefully be making something. To get to the shed, I'm going to be walking along 3 different canals, and indeed along the full length of one of them. So I thought I'd split the videos up into 3, each probably a little longer than my usual ones. So I'm going to do the outward and the return stretch of each canal section on each day's video. Show you a little bit about where we live, chat about the canal's history and how they developed, and then ramble, muse, whatever about other subjects on the way back. Serendipity, salt, synchronicity are the sort of chosen subjects for the days. So let's pack the trusty Eurocamp rucksack with some camera batteries, cameras, a flask, some bickies, and as I shall mention in a video in a week or so, a charged up mobile phone, and hit the road, or should I say canal, on day 1. Serendipity, a relatively short walk into Droitwich, and the last leg of the return journey back, which will only total about 1.5 miles or so, but at least you'll see whether or not I actually managed to finish the challenge today without killing myself. Now, as you can see, we're really lucky with the access to the towpath that we have from our house, and 10 or 15 minutes sees us either in open countryside in one direction, or the way I'm going now into Droitwich. The weirs here from the overspill, they run down, literally down through the gully here into the river Salop, which is running just down here, through there, all the way around. We moved here in 1974 to a house just over the other side of the valley, and then to our present house in 1979. First stretch we're walking along is the Droitwich barge canal, and this runs through 9 locks from the River Severn down at Worcester through to the Droitwich Junction Canal that we're going to explore tomorrow. Droitwich has been an important centre for the production of salt that's obtained from natural brine springs since before Roman times, and in order to get the product to market, an Act of Parliament was obtained in 1662 to allow improvements to the River Salop, which is over the other side of the valley and runs pretty much parallel with the canal most of the way into Worcester, but this work was never completed. Morning. So now we're into Vines Park, which is where all the brine springs were and still are in places. And you can see on the left how close we are to the river now, and the difference in level. There's the river. And just pop and have a look at the marina that we have, which is just, I think it's a short stay more than anything. There's a much bigger marina we'll see when we get up to Hanbury. And over on the far side is the waterway base that the most of the restoration was done from over there. Several further attempts were made to make the river navigable, but they pretty much all failed. With salt production increasing, the Droitwich Council asked James Brindley, the canal engineer, to survey a route from the town of Droitwich down to the River Severn, and he did this in 1767. and the following year they had an Act of Parliament which obtained authority to start the construction, and that started in 1768. It was constructed as a broad canal, which will take boats larger than the normal narrow boats that you associate with canals nowadays. The canal was capable of taking the 7 trows, which is a type of boat that's about 14.5 foot wide, whereas the normal narrow boats that we see on the canal most of the time are only 7 foot wide. The canal's 5.7 miles long, and like most of Brindley's canals, it's a contour canal. It follows the contour of the ground rather than trying to go up and down hills, and that reduces the amount of embankments and cuttings, but it makes it more windy and a longer route perhaps. They opened the canal on 12th of March 1771, and it was pretty much successful from day one. The fortunes, however, started to decline after about 1830, when they found a better source of brine at a place called Stoke Prior, which is effectively where we're going today. And by 1906 the cost of maintaining the canal was actually exceeding its income. They stopped using the canal as such in 1916, and they got an act of abandonment in July 1939, and so at that point the canal effectively fell into disrepair. And essentially that's it. We're back into the back of Droitwich now. The buildings you can see over there are essentially the high street, so it's a very short walk in, convenient, and as I said, in the opposite direction we're out in open countryside in less than the same sort of distance. You can see the old canal infrastructure over the far side, and over this side you can see where they've had to redo it in the 80s. Morning. So here we are at the end of the barge canal, just under a mile into the walk, and so let's skip forward 3 or 4 hours to the return leg when we come back. Now, I often say in the videos that I've been pretty lucky in life. It's fair to say there is sometimes perhaps an element of making your own luck. I think it was Gary Player that used to say that the more I practice, the luckier I get. So what is serendipity? Well, it's defined as the occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way. And I think 1 or 2 things I've got that I can mention will pretty much demonstrate that. Let's start with my first job at W.J. Whitall and Son, a building company in Birmingham, in 1969. I left school at 18 after a not particularly illustrious academic time. Pretty much all my school reports indicated that I had the ability, but I was lazy, and that's probably a view I wouldn't argue with. I certainly didn't really get on well with school, and in hindsight I'd probably have been better leaving at 16. I also didn't have any idea what I wanted to do as a job, and apart from wanting to work outside, I didn't really have much of a clue where I was going. The only thing I knew was that I didn't want to go into Dad's garage business, and probably that's laziness again, as I saw the hours that he had to put in to put bread on the table. I saw an advertisement in the Birmingham Mail for a trainee surveyor, and that seemed to look interesting. It seemed to be the sort of thing I might be interested in. So I applied and got the job, and it turned out to be the right one. It's led to a lifetime career, so I've been fortunate in that way, and it was probably my first grown-up brush with serendipity, in that I seemed to fall on my feet and find something as a job that I was happy and content with for over 40 years. There was, however, a far more important instance of finding something accidentally good, in the shape of a young girl in the typing pool who, after a couple of years, I started to go out with. And despite the firm going bust in 1972, we carried on seeing one another. Despite living on opposite sides of the city, and we married in 1974, and so far it seems to be working out okay. So there we were, looking for a house, and like a lot of Brummies we looked to Redditch, which was a large new town that was growing up on the south side of the city with an awful lot of new housing development. We found a house, we went off to get a mortgage, and once again serendipity kicked in, although it didn't seem like it at the time. Ground rents over in Redditch were only fixed for 33 years, and despite the fact we only wanted a 25-year mortgage, we couldn't get one because they said that there was uncertainty about how much you'd have to pay when the ground rent went up. Much disheartened, there was a chance remark from my mum that they were building some houses in Droitwich, and we popped down here, and it's been another really fortunate series of events with a pretty good outcome that we've stayed here ever since. Career-wise, perhaps the most fortunate event ever, I fell over on site. By about late 80s, I was working as a surveyor for John Molam and Son, and I finished a job that I'd been on in Birmingham, and I was due to move with the rest of the team into a new factory construction job for gripper rods over in Canal. So day one on the site, I'd gone out for a site meeting or something. I think I climbed up a bank to get out the way of an excavator, slipped and twisted my ankle. Didn't think much about it at the time, but by the end of the site meeting someone remarked that my ankle shouldn't really be twice the size of the other one, and I got carted off to hospital to get looked at. It was it was a bad sprain. There were torn ligaments, made a bit of a mess of it, and I got put in plaster and taken home, and I was off for work for a couple of weeks. So of course by the time I returned to work, another surveyor had been assigned to the job that I was working on, and it was a job that turned out to be a bit of a bitch really, so I'm quite happy about that. And as I kicked around the office for a day or two, I was sort of finding stuff to do, and I got paired up with a new guy who'd just joined the company as a contracts manager, and from that day on we naturally seemed to function pretty much as a single entity. There was almost a telepathic understanding, and for the next 10 years or so we became a successful team with Molams, as well as becoming best mates. He hopped off for France to go and join a young lady over there for a year or so, and after a spell with another contracts manager that was not so easy going for me, I got promoted to commercial manager and moved away from the coalface effectively, and then fortunately my buddy came back from France and soon became my opposite number again as construction manager, and so the team were back in business. And then again fate stepped in the shape of a headhunter looking up to set a new company in Leicester, and my buddy went off to get it started while I was more concerned at the time to keep a bit of a safe, secure job, having got 2 kids at university by then. But it wasn't long before I was lured over and then spent another 7 years working together with him over there. So that fall on site led to 20 years, nearly half my working career, working with someone I got a huge respect for, who I probably saw more of than my wife for much of that time, and who I never had a cross word with in all that time. So that again has been pretty fortunate. However, that's enough of serendipity. I'm nearly home now, completed the walk. It's time for a sit down, a rest and a cup of coffee. I hope you enjoyed that bit of video. Join me tomorrow and we'll have a walk along the full length of the Droitwich Junction Canal, the next one up, when we'll have a look at its history on the way out and have a chat about salt on the way back.